So Deutsche Bank seeks to be a house bank to our clients, so which means to say we are able to service them from their balance sheet perspective to their profit and loss financial requirements perspective. So current asset, current liabilities, all the way to market entry requirements. So for example, in the division that I work for, security services, we are known as the best sub-custodian for emerging markets. So which means to say, we understand the nuances, we understand the dynamics in order to best support our clients' market entry and cross-border investment into such markets. So in the technology space, Deutsche Bank is no stranger. So back all the way in 1990s, we were among the first bank to actually explore eCash by David Shom, in order to see how eCash can be used for internet e-commerce payment during the time whereby e-commerce cryptography was not too strong. So we progressed then. So
that was like almost like decades ago, right?
2 decades ago. Yeah, decades ago, right? So today we've got a dedicated VAS team that looks at the virtual asset players to see how we can support them with cash account, of course, right? If you may already seen the announcement with Bitpanda crypto exchange in order to service them as well. Another strategic alliance with Taurus on digital asset custody, our own digital asset custody program, and of course, in Project Guardian. So in summary, Deutsche Bank seeks to not just be a house bank, but to also grow together with some of our most demanding clients in order to service them in the future that is coming.
So I'm very curious from your side, right? You decided to put up an application with MAS just to participate in Project Guardian this year. Of course, Axelar is a big part of that as well. We've been working together on this for a while. Would love to hear more about what motivated your participation in Project Guardian this year.
That's right. Digitalization is a very important topic for us, as you can see from Deutsche Bank's own DNA since the 1990s and maybe even before. So for Project Guardian, we believe that it's an initiative that will seek to progress how you can use a DLT in order to advance the industry. So for example, it brings together regulators, market participants, as well as fintech collaborators such as yourself and Memento's blockchain. So this is a venue that we see that, hey, we can go there to see what more can be done, what more can be explored, what should we be thinking about in order to start, designing our services, to meet the demands of our most demanding clients, the asset managers who are already into blockchain, into digital assets and digital funds. So it's no-brainer that we should actually be in Project Guardian.
Amazing, and excited to work on this project together.
Likewise too, because we noticed as well that Axelar has been involved in Project Guardian as well, and then your Asia visibility is actually quite high. You've got very active engagements there, so we're very excited to be working together with you.
Amazing to hear. And on the topic of Axelar, how important do you think Axelar and interoperability is for, I guess, the initiative we're doing together for Project Guardian in particular, but also for the adoption of blockchain technology across financial institutions? Do you think interoperability is going to play a key role on that front?
Yes, definitely. Right. We believe that it will be a multi-chain world, and therefore interoperability will become very important in order to allow investors and clients to navigate through this multi-chain environment seamlessly and effortlessly. But importantly as well, we also see that interoperability has got a butterfly effect. It leads to other positive effects too. So let's just take this chain of reasoning. With interoperability, investors now can access products across different chains effortlessly. Then it will say, hey, now that I can actually tap across reach into the different products across the different chain, then how can I, be shielded from the private key cryptography management? Because I don't really need or want to be managing this cryptography. So can you abstract that away from the experience? And from there, you could see then that it can lead to the next one to say, okay, once you have interoperability, I can access different products on different chain. I'm able to access it effortlessly without needing to be concerned about the complexity of public-private key management, then it fosters adoption. So I think it's really important. And of course, with Axelar, your reputation is really good. And then, with your background in designing Agora, which is a very reputable blockchain itself, we see that, it combines the best of, hey, you know how blockchain works and how interoperability works. And like I mentioned before too, your Asia visibility is really high. So, it's great to have this opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah, and it's interoperability, as you mentioned, that's really important for the end user experience. And when we started Axelar, really the vision was to connect all chains, but also, the end user is, the retail user, right? Whoever is interacting, has an asset that wants to interact with an application or with a vendor. How can we make it so that everything on the back end is abstracted away and the user only has to think about their assets and applications and nothing else, right? The user should not know which chain they are using. And as an extension of that, as we interoperate with legacy or traditional financial systems, that also should be abstracted away, right? So it's not just interoperability between blockchains, but also how we interoperate with the existing financial system and upgrade it, at global scale. Yeah, and it's a hard problem. It's not just a technical problem, right? At least from our side, with Axelar, we feel like, from a technical perspective, we have a solution that works, is, secure enough for the current needs of the market. But it's a social coordination problem, right? To a large extent, we have so many different players to, migrate their stacks. It's going to take time, but it's great to see constant progress. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are progressing at a very good rate. Most institutions we talk to, they're focused on private blockchain, right? But we saw initiatives like BlackRock's fund tokenizations. Those happened, I believe, on a public chain on Ethereum mainnet, right? So how is Deutsche Bank, if you can talk a little bit about thinking about private versus public blockchains, and do you see in general other institutions as well focus on public blockchains, or it's more one way or the other?
I think both private and public blockchain has got its pros and cons, and ultimately it depends on which one of the pros appeals more to you. So we could see, for example, with private chains, you're in control of governance, and then you don't need to contend with the challenges of the public chain. But with a private chain, then there are the cost element, the fragmentation consideration, and then at the same time as well, what about inclusiveness and how do you innovate then, right? So those are some of the other considerations that comes with a private chain. But with the public chain, there is accessibility. It's already there. It's like internet. You don't need to build, you don't need to maintain, and you need to then just focus on, okay, how do you make it a fit for what you seek to achieve? So from a public chain, then we see that the barriers to entry is lower, is able to allow people to participate easier, right? And let me just take from one example. As an investor, do I want to be onboarded into 3 or 4 private chain, or do I just want to be able to operate through one single window, which is the public chain, in order to access all the different products and services? You can say that interoperability then plays a part here, but ultimately, if I need to take a look at my records, my activities and things, it would be good to have a single window, and we see that a public chain offers a sort of innovation and capacity and capability to do so. So that's from a client perspective. For our work, what we are really looking at is, okay, with these advantages of a public chain, can we add a permission layer so that we can increase the governance? And then on top of the permission layer, can we do it on a layer 2 so that we increase the resilience? So this is what we are assessing in Project Guardian.
And you make a very valid point, right? That for experimentation, you need something permissionless, right? I think permissionless blockchains are kind of like a startup. You can just experiment as much as you want. There's very small consequences, though there's always consequences and risk, right? When you're dealing with value in the permissionless domain. While private blockchains, we're talking about established organizations that will have to take a risk to use those technologies and cannot move as fast, right? So the experimentation is probably going to happen on the public domain, and then the institutions are going to take the best outcomes of those experiments and incorporate them. And it's also how we think about growing Axelar as well, right? We're doing a lot of work with institutions, such as yourselves, but at the same time, we do know that most of the adoption in the near term will have to come from the permissionless setting, the native Web3 users. Once we prove product market fit there, and we have a lot of activity, only then can we truly get adopted by the institutions as well, right? So our biggest focus has always been to get the permissionless players to use us, and we are in a state today where the biggest assets in the space use Axelar for interoperability, and that's really what allows us to also build a reputation and relationship with players such as yourselves, because I feel like institutions right now always look at the permissionless space for adoption, where developer activity is, to decide who they're going to partner with for their technology.
Yes, I think in the public side, right, public chain side, there's a lot of innovation, a lot of dynamics that's happening there. I mean, to use an analogy, today everybody uses internet for internet banking, internet financial services and things. Nobody has got their own proprietary internet, walled internet to say, okay, this is my private internet that you can only use with my internet banking facilities. No, exactly. Everybody uses the public internet, and then you build the permission, you build the security on top of the public internet in order to carry out what you want to deliver to your client. From a client's perspective, right, I only need to understand the public internet and then your application. I don't need to be onboarded 3 times into 3 different proprietary internets. So I think, ultimately, that's where interoperability, private as well as the public, all each has got to play a role to play.
Exactly. And when we're talking about, interoperability, but blockchain technology in general, what would you say are the main benefits, maybe both from the perspective of the institutions themselves, but also from the perspective of the end user, right? What can this technology offer that was not possible until today?
I'll go, with the term that people have coined, right? The Internet of Value. So with blockchain, first it carries value, and secondly, it carries native value. Previously through crypto, these days, right, through tokenized representation of assets and money. And very importantly as well is the whole characteristics of programmability. When you add these 2 things together, you start changing business model and operating model. And then you start to seeing how you can actually unlock certain additional value for clients and for the industry. In the experiments that we have done with composability and programmability, we could actually reduce the footprint of the market structure. What this means is that you don't need to have so many participants doing very specialized roles, because these specialized roles today can now be actually undertaken by smart contracts. So we have seen, for example, that the blockchain ledger is now increasingly used as an investor record, accepted by certain regulators in this asset management space. So what does that mean? That means that this investor record does not need to be maintained by an intermediary anymore. That intermediary can focus on managing other new value-added matters. So that's why we see blockchain, the ability to change operating model, business model, and then at the same time as well, right, allow investors and market players to do certain new things that has not been able to be done before. Our clients are working with blockchain technology in order to realize new value, and then they see new operational efficiencies as well. But one of the requirements is that even as a blockchain can take out all costs and all complexity, it shouldn't be introducing too much of the new costs and too much of the new complexities as well. Right, so one of the requirements, how do we then take out this complexity? Because what they want to focus is not exactly on technology, but on achieving their business goal. And then as a service provider, such as security services custodian, how then do we service them? For example, if their plan is to go and launch a digital fund, how do we service investor record that's on-chain, or fund administration that's on-chain, and potentially with off-chain interactions as well, and digital asset custody. And what happens if the custody is actually custodized with bridges? So can we work with trusted bridges, for example? And then what does that mean? So ultimately, it's about preparing ourselves in order to service the client, because clients, right, would like to avoid new complexity, new costs, and then in order to achieve new efficiency and new value creation. So we could see that there are changes in the industry, that the traditional players needs to be more prepared, right? Before it leads into a moment whereby everybody starts thinking, hey, are we being disintermediated? You know, like the payment space, whereby payment, right, it's suddenly, oh, are we being disintermediated by the fintech payment? So is that, you know, developing and happening in the capital markets?
Yeah, everyone wants to be ready and well positioned, right, for when this happens, to have a strong story there. So we're all trying to, you know, improve efficiencies in the global financial system and, you know, eventually just upgrade the whole system by the use of blockchain technology, right? To achieve this global layer of liquidity, right, and standardizing this layer across, you know, different countries, regulatory regimes, hundreds of institutions, what are some of the requirements that blockchain technology has to meet, both on a technical perspective, but also from a regulatory standardization standpoint?
Yeah, we characterize this period of history as a transition period, whereby blockchain technology will run in parallel with traditional technology. Therefore, for the blockchain technology to be successful, it needs to be cost effective. It needs to be able to support greater value than the traditional technology. Otherwise, from a cost benefit perspective, right, it'll be very difficult, right, to sustain the blockchain evolution. So I think that's one thing. Blockchain promise, and has got a lot of potential and a lot of strength that it can deliver. So with projects like Project Guardian initiatives, and then, with the central bank initiatives, the one on the unified ledger, then how do we start pushing and reducing the complexity in order to encourage adoption? So if we assume that technology is mature enough, if we assume that the regulation is mature enough, which is as well, and which means to say, then how do we encourage adoption? And adoption generally is that, okay, I can do something really different in order to achieve something even better. I can do something very productive, with half of what I need to spend on. Or, everybody understands what I need to do, and therefore there's no objections to what I need to do. So in this regard, standardization, understanding of the risks, right? Having a due diligence, very mundane things, but that matters in order to communicate to the risk manager, to the auditors, right? People who are responsible to manage the risk to say, okay, yes, this is something that I understand, then this is something that, is acceptable. And that's where the adoption will come in order to unlock all these promises that, blockchain is capable of. So as a summary, right, the strength of the blockchain is underpinned by mundane requirements such as a due diligence risk questionnaire that, the risk manager, that the auditor, that the compliance, that the legal department can look through and say, yes, with this checklist, I can better understand what you are trying to do in order for me to fulfill my risk manager role.
So we have the technical side, which I think we agree it's largely solved, but then we have to coordinate all these different partners entities, right? So there's a lot of work ahead of us. And you also touched on the point of this unified global ledger, right? And I think there's like two sides here, right? Some people think, maybe we can just create this global ledger, right, where everyone writes state. It's also a question of scalability, if we can scale one global state ledger. But let's assume we do that. Do you think it's likely that everything will be on the same ledger, or many smaller ledgers that will interoperate through Axelar or similar interoperability technology?
I'll use a word that is in Project Agora as well, right? There will be a network of networks. And in fact, right, this unified ledger, what, from my understanding, is really unifying public sector chain, in this case, central bank, payments and clearing settlement systems, together with private sector commercial money platforms. Right? And then both, right, will write onto a third platform or third chain that is the unifying layer for settlement, for clearing, and then for transactions to happen. So if we take that as an anchor, then we can see that, okay, from a private sector side, we would assume that it will be a multi-chain environment, and therefore it will be a network of networks connecting to this unified ledger. And then on the other side will be the central bank clearing and settlement system that will be then connected to this unified ledger as well in order to make it work. So it'll be a network of networks.
So under the hood, it is going to be like, a multi-chain world, but from the perspective of the user who is interacting with those chains, it's going to feel like a unified ledger, and they will have access to one entry point and they will not have to worry about it, right? So the unified ledger is more of a concept how we're, I guess, structuring everything under the same system. Everything is composable, interoperable, and we offer the user experience, right? Which is at the end of the day, what we need to do.
Yeah. I think it offers a framework whereby everybody, right, from different sectors and different perspective can agree on. Again, right, I really like the internet example. Today, right, when I send something from internet from Singapore to you, right, in States or Greece, it goes through numerous ISPs and telco seamlessly and nearly instantaneously. There must be something coordinating this whole communication experience. I think this is something that can we achieve then for blockchain too?
Oh, that's an amazing analogy. So yeah, the unified ledger is effectively the internet, right? When you tell someone about the internet, they think of one unified thing, even though it's multiple moving pieces under the hood. Then it should be the same with blockchains, right? Like people will think of this unified ledger, even though under the hood there's a lot of complexity which we abstract away, right? Through the joint work of, I guess, Axelar, Deutsche Bank, and everyone else
everybody
working
else
in this wonderful industry.